All right. So, okay, so before we dive into the actual Q&A part, can Rohan and Sean give your name, what you plan on studying, anything you've been involved with in college, like classes, organizations, or anything? And then finally, maybe something that you did in AVIC, your former position, or whatever you enjoyed about finance, or like specific topics to either like study or things to invest in. Rohan, you can go on first.
All right, cool. Hey guys, it's good to be back. Like my Zoom thing says, my name is Rohan. I'm currently a freshman at USC studying computer science, planning to minor in astronomy of all things. So college has been an interesting experience so far. I'm studying from home. So it's been just me in the Bay Area this entire time. What was the other part of the question, Cassie?
Anything you've been involved with in college, like
Right.
courses, or organizations?
Yeah. So I've been part of, I am, so in college, I joined something called I go to USC. So our club's called the Trojan Venture Partners. So that's kind of like it's kind of like an AVIC, but it's more focused on venture capital. So it's kind of like a continuation of what I was doing with AVIC here in college. And I also was part of a club called Money Think, which is more geared around personal finance. And basically it was a good experience. I wasn't as involved this past semester. I was more focused on Trojan Venture Partners. But yeah, and I'm what else am I involved with? I think those are the two main clubs for now. Yeah.
Okay, Sean?
Hey guys, I'm Sean. I'm a freshman at UCSD and I'm majoring in econ. Something I've been doing at UCSD is that I'm part of what's called the Undergrad Econ Society at UCSD. So basically, this is like the official econ club for the econ department at UCSD. And I'm part of the finance committee. So basically, similar to my role as treasurer and vice president, I help like set up fundraisers on campus at UCSD. So I've been doing that. And yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I'll ask Rajan to introduce himself too when he gets here, but we should move on to the first question. Okay. So how and when did you get into investing? You can just talk about any early stories from your investing career. Oh, anyone can dive in anytime.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I got interested in investing, like I had heard about this guy named Warren Buffett when I was 11 years old, and I didn't really know how he had made his money. And so I just looked into it and I thought it was a pretty fascinating idea of just, learning to invest and growing your wealth that way. So from the age of 11 to 12, I was like learning about his style of investing, reading some books about him. And basically throughout middle school, it was pretty much a hobby project, or just kind of like a hobby to like learn about investing, invest on my own, manage my own portfolio. I think I made my first few investments when I was like 11. Yeah. And then going from there, I got to high school, and then I joined AVIC in my sophomore year, and then just continued the presence and the interest in finance through that. So.
Yeah, for me, I started getting into investing maybe around middle school. So I was in Boy Scouts, and one of the merit badges you had to do was this merit badge called the personal management merit badge. And basically, it was kind of like a personal finance, so like budgeting, saving, stocks. And one of the requirements is that you had to track like 5 stocks for a week and basically see how you did. So I did that, and then at the end of the week, I kind of noticed that I did pretty well for what I thought was like I just picked like stocks that I liked. So then I decided to look more into investing. So I started like maybe when I was like in like 7th, 8th grade. I put a couple $100s in, and then I gradually added more money as like I got more into investing. And then I also joined the investment club in sophomore year, and then just took it from there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I guess they show you that those two stories show you that you don't have one way of getting into investing, right? Like Rohan got in kind of through, I guess, word of mouth and hearing about famous people who invested, and he dove himself into it. Sean got his financial career started with like Boy Scouts, which I know a couple of our members did as well, hearing from the officer interviews. So that's really cool. Personally, I think my first experience in investing really wasn't even real investing. It was a stock market game freshman year. I remember Colleen and I did that together and we did terribly. That was really funny. But sophomore year was a lot better. We started actually understanding like, how you study up on stocks before you actually invest in them, how obviously everything comes down to timing, but also just analysis. And even if the stock market game has its flaws, as we've acknowledged, it's still a really good gateway into actual like, investing with your money. And so that's why I encourage all of you to continue with that next year. Okay, Gordon, you want to hand off to the next question?
Absolutely. Rohan and Sean, sorry, are you guys hearing an echo?
I don't hear an echo.
I know Rohan and Sean just talked about how they got into investing. Can you guys kind of go through some of your biggest accomplishments in investing and maybe some of your biggest challenges when you guys were first starting out?
I'll go first, I guess. Yeah, I think like the biggest challenge and like most first time investors face it is just like getting over the hump of like trying to understand what finance actually is, because it's full of complex jargon. Like even the first few books I read took me a while to actually like understand what it means. And once you kind of like read through finance and like kind of get a sense for what all the concepts are about, you'll really kind of like dumb it down to like four main concepts. And those four concepts are really like opportunity, just like the idea of opportunity and choices you have to make, so kind of more economic. The second is risk management, and just how do you manage the fact that there can be bad things that can happen. The third is the time value of money, and the fourth is compound interest. So those two are kind of like more unique to finance, but what those really stem from is like kind of basic life common sense intuition. So that's not something finance is really good at conveying at the beginning, which is like it's really based on like these common sense ideas, and from there you can work up to more of the more complex things that finance has, like more complex equations relating to stocks, or even like reading financial statements or something like that. Like the balance sheet, you can, if you like for example the balance sheet, it took me a while to like it's really in the name, like it's not that complex to understand, which most kind of finance books make it seem like at the beginning. But again, the balance sheet, it's supposed to balance on both ends, right? So once you have that kind of idea there, then you can try and like sort through and find any any metrics about a company that might stick out. So so things like that, and just kind of like learning that relationship and how it's really just kind of like common sense, basic math at the end of the day. That's something that finance never really gives a first good impression of. So that was like learning that, and then also just applying that. That was like kind of the first big hurdle to get over, like the first challenge, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge for me in the beginning was like the limited amount of capital I had to invest, because I had like so many different companies that I wanted to invest in the beginning. Like I wanted to invest in Apple, Nike, all those other companies, but I only had like a certain amount of money, right? Usually it's just like a couple $100, maybe even like $1,000 at most. So I guess like figuring out how like you can like determine like which companies you want to invest your money in, like that's kind of a process that you have to develop on your own. And I think the great thing about like all these like new investment apps like Robinhood and like all like the major like brokerages that like they don't charge you commissions anymore for stock trading, I think that's a really great thing, because it allows you to like invest more of your money instead of it being like stuck, instead of it like being taken up by like commissions, which like you have to pay like $10 to buy and sell stocks. So like now like I think it's a great thing. So I guess determining how to like invest whatever money you have in whatever stocks you want to invest in, that's probably the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, those are both like really great challenges. Evan will not be able to make it today. I think he has a couple commitments that he made. But for Rohan and Sean, thanks for sharing those challenges, because obviously there's a lot of like challenges that everyone faces investing. And I feel like some of the ones you shared were really helpful for our members, because you guys talked more about like really basic beginner level kind of mistakes, or not even mistakes, but things that people kind of have to understand before they start, going into the advanced things. Because I feel like a lot of times, especially with investing, I have a tendency, as well as I'm sure other people, to kind of just like try to go for the more difficult things before even covering the basics, which is obviously a problem. So thanks for talking about that. Okay. The next question is a little bit about your time in street fins. So if anyone here isn't already aware, Rohan and Sean and Rajan, once he arrives, were the original founders of Street Fins, and later Street Fins merged with the Financial Literacy Journal, which is a kind of sort of company that was very similar to Street Fins. And so Street Fins is like the official name now, but it wasn't always so big, and I guess it didn't always have so many different kinds of like media. So I was wondering if Rohan and Sean could maybe talk about their experiences in Street Fins, anything you've learned or enjoyed, or maybe any struggles that you faced in the beginning.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, so like Street Fins, it was something that I had an idea for, and Sean and Rajan, I kind of like told them about it as well, and they kind of agreed to join us, and we all became like co-founders of it. But when I joined AVIC in sophomore year, so 10th grade, I had this idea of kind of like broadening out what we were teaching. So not just teaching it to students at AVIC, but across the nation and hopefully the world, and just kind of like having that perspective of students teaching students finance and simplifying it for them. That's something we wanted to convey, not through like meetings all the time, but through actual content. So we started writing some articles. Initially, we're called Invest HS, and then we changed our name to Street Fins. And so Rajan, Sean, and I, we just started writing a bunch of articles, everything from like basic education to like stocks. And I think Sean wrote an article on like Keurig Dr. Pepper, like analyzing the stock and why it's a good buy. So yeah, we just like wrote a lot. And then eventually, I think, Cassie came on board. A lot of the other people here also are part of Street Fins as well. So the team grew. And then that was kind of like from 10th through 12th grade, it was just, blogs. And then the summer before my senior year, I wanted to expand from just like written content to podcasts. And this was summer of 2019 when I recorded my first, I guess, podcast intro for Street Fins official podcast. The podcast is called Finance Simplified, and like the goal is to have on experts from all over the financial industry as well as academia come on and talk to me and now co-hosts too about some certain topic in finance or economics, and just really simplify it for students to understand. And so that was something I started my senior year. Parallel with all this like content stuff going on with Street Fins, we decided to launch a club network that AVIC was the first kind of chapter member of. It's called the Street Fins Club Network, and right now it's like 40 something schools or clubs. And so basically all the clubs get to like meet and share and compete and do a lot of cool stuff together in hopes of strengthening one another and also learning finance kind of as a whole community and network. Recently, when I got to college, Street Fins I'm still working on Street Fins, so is Sean. Basically, we wanted to continue our involvement at least until we get on campus and start getting bogged down with a lot of other college commitments. So yeah, and since then we've, as Cassie mentioned, we had a merger with another organization that was similar to what we were doing with the content end. Our content is best described as like the Wall Street Journal or CNBC simplified for students, because it's like translated by students for students. And so yeah, and after that we also had another merger. So now we kind of have had two, and one of them was for the content, the other was for the club network aspect. So from that point on, it's just been a pretty smooth ride. We got a lot more people involved. The team is like, I think it's international now. So there's a lot of people involved. In regards to the podcast though, that's been something we've been working on. We've had people like Anthony Scaramucci on the podcast. We've had billionaires on the podcast, Nobel Prize winners. We even had the former second in command of the U.S. Treasury on the podcast as well. She was the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. So all our guests are like pretty all-star quality, I'd say, and they've been really generous with their time. So it's really good to have that content out there. We also have a newsletter as well. So that's like a once a week thing where students and really anyone who wants to learn finance in a simplified way, no matter how old you are. You guys get like a recap of the past week in markets, whatever happened, plus some extra educational material to help kind of sort out what went on. So yeah, that's kind of like the long answer about how it's going. Sean, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to say that when I first started, like I guess Rohan and I and like Rajan, we started talking about this like maybe freshman year, and then we kind of made it like a reality like sophomore year. And like when I first started, I didn't really expect Street Fin to be where it is today. So that's pretty cool, like seeing how it's really grown. And I just want to thank Rohan. He's really the man behind everything. He helped set up the website, the articles, the podcast, and everything. So yeah, just thanks to Rohan. And also, sometimes like I guess the challenge is that like you're not really like paid to do these articles, right? We're kind of doing it as like a passion of ours. So it's kind of like a labor of love. But the cool thing is that once you publish this article on the Street Fins website, and then sharing with other people, it's pretty cool, because then like sometimes like when my friends in college, they ask me about like how should they like get more knowledge about investing or stocks, I refer them to Street Fins, and then I kind of give them some of the articles that I've written, that Rohan's written, that other people have written, and they found it a really great resource. So yeah, so if you guys are also interested in writing for Street Fins, just let us know, and we'd be happy to have you.
Thank you both so much for going into so much depth about Street Fins and all the ventures you guys have had. Do you guys mind? I know we have a lot of rising business owners and maybe entrepreneurs in our audience. Do you guys mind talking about how you guys were able to grow Street Fins to the extent that it is today? I think it's even international, which is so great. Kind of talk about how this small idea that started freshman year became such a global brand.
Yeah, I mean, when we started it, we also didn't know we would expand. We thought we were going to keep it just to written content. But then when it was senior year, it still wasn't the team it was right now. It's kind of like really taken off in like, I'd say like the past 6 months to 8 months, when we've like gotten a lot more people on board. So that's really when we realized like there's really an opportunity to like really grow this and give it a lot more shot, a bigger shot than like just another kind of club project or anything like that. Yeah, and I think like in terms of growing it, we just kind of kept at it. It was a hobby project until I graduated, and then I gave it a lot more effort along with Sean as well, and everyone else who was part of the team. And yeah, I mean it's hard to say like how we've grown, because it's kind of just been organic. Like we've had people coming listening to the podcast, we've had people just kind of listening to the reading the articles, and then people have also joined because of the club network that we have too. So just kind of keeping at and persisting with those things is what has, I guess, had the biggest effect on our growth.
Yeah, it seems like just go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't really have that much to add. I just said like I guess adding content. So like for us, that was mainly just writing articles. I think that really helped us, become more prominent on the internet.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of your stuff is really content driven, and just to make sure that you guys really persevered through getting through that first obstacle and getting through networking. And it looks like you guys have a lot of networking connections that you can fall back on, and especially I know the podcast, which has a lot of really influential people on it. So can you guys kind of talk about how you guys were even able to get those really prominent figures and what kind of goes into networking to that extent?
Yeah, I'll take this one as well. Yeah, like I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the background. If he's barking, sorry about that. Yeah, the whole idea of like bringing a guest speaker or bringing anything, it just kind of was when I joined AVIC in my sophomore year. I basically had like I was joining as the outreach officer, so I was in charge of bringing like guest speakers and like kind of marketing and everything. So I just kind of thought about like it'd be cool to like have like a really big name come to campus, because previous guest speakers really weren't that big. So I kind of was just like guessing emails at that point for like these big people to come speak. And then the first person who I reached out to, who I had met one of the partners at the firm he had started the summer before 10th grade. So I got to know of this guy, and like he was the first kind of guy who agreed to come speak. And then from there on, it was a guy named Tim Draper. He's infamous in many circles. But after that, it was like after we got Tim to come speak, we were able to build relationships with other kind of like prominent figures in the space. And really, it was just like a combination of luck and cold emailing, and then just also like once you kind of like got connected with those people, it's just like maintaining the relationship so they can come on your podcast later, or like give you advice later, or come back to speak for high schools later on, whatever it might be. And the best thing is like these people that you connect with, they know other people as well. Like just recently, one of our guest speakers, who is a guy named Howard Marks, he's like a pretty big billionaire guy. He was able to connect me with quite a few people in the industry who are also pretty prominent figures. So it's kind of like a big exponential effect. Like you'll know one person, he's going to know a bunch of people, you connect with all those people. It's kind of like an outward like network effect that happens. And when it's with like a lot of big people, then you can like really grow your network really fast. And it's actually meaningful too.
Okay, yeah, everyone I think here should know Rohan is a really impressive network. And I think that's where a lot of like the Street Fins podcast guests really stems from. So I guess those two have like a symbiotic relationship. Rajan, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you're studying in college, maybe anything you're involved with in college, can be related to finance or not. And we'll start with that.
Okay, for sure. Can you guys hear me all right, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry I'm late. I had a class that ran a little bit long. I'm at Indiana University Kelley School of Business right now. I'm double majoring in finance and accounting and minoring in healthcare management and policy. And things I'm involved in campus, we have a financial services club, which I'm involved in. I'm hoping to get involved in that industry later on. I'm involved in a student-run investment fund, as well as a social fraternity.
Okay, cool, thank you. That should give a lot, our members a lot to ask about. So we're actually going to switch gears a little bit to a different topic. We just talked about networking and Street Fins. So we're going to talk a little bit more about advice right now. So first of all, in high school, or given high schoolers, what advice would you give to them to further their financial literacy? Which I know is something that you three talk about a lot. What with Street Fins?
I think in my case, I think try to involve yourself with your parents' finances more. And that seems like it's kind of something that like it might be difficult to do, but just by asking questions around the house about where money is being invested, or how savings accounts work, or how your college is going to be paid for, those kinds of things can give you a really good understanding of basic financial skills that you should have later in life. And the earlier you develop them, the better. And then also reading Investopedia and Street Fins and other similar publications, just searching around, finding things that you're interested in within the realm of finance and financial literacy, and trying to build off of them as much as you can.
Yeah, I'll echo that point about like getting involved with parents' finances. Like just recently we had a podcast episode where at the end of each episode, we ask like our guests, like, what advice do you have for students and young people, right? So I got one of the better pieces of advice from this guy who was the former chief risk manager at a very big hedge fund called AQR Capital Management. It's like, I think the fourth biggest hedge fund in the world. So he basically said, like, he also teaches a finance class as well, but he said you should ask your parents what amount of money it would take to mimic their lifestyle growing up. So, or your lifestyle growing up. So that way you have kind of like this baseline for how much money you need to make to like mimic what lifestyle you grew up with. I thought that was a pretty interesting piece of advice, because a lot of people just like, they don't have the first clue of like how much money you need to actually maintain like, you know, rent or a house, like, especially when you're starting out in your career, like they're just like basic life needs and things like that. And also like what that number really corresponds to in terms of a lifestyle. So I thought that was some pretty good advice. And it's something he also asks a lot of his finance students, which is like, the question he asks is, do you know how much your parents make? And it's not to like really get into like the details of, you know, your personal finance life or anything like that, but it's to have the students personally answer to themselves what kind of what amount of money would it take to mimic the lifestyle that, you know, they grew up with. And that's a very important number to keep in mind, because you either want to have that lifestyle or something better than it. So that's kind of like, that's how it usually goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my advice for financial literacy is kind of be willing to learn, whether that's like you're reading. So a book I recommend, it's called One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. That's a great book if you guys are interested in learning more about like stocks. Another piece of advice I would have is that like, it's not really related to financial literacy, but like getting a job, because I think getting a job teaches you a lot of very important life skills. Not only does it teach you about like time management, it also teaches you how to like, you know, manage your money, because, you know, you're getting a paycheck and kind of have to figure out how you're going to do it. Are you going to spend it all? Are you going to save some of it? Those are very like important questions that you need to consider. And also it kind of teaches you like how to like interact with people. So I think, yeah, like being willing to learn, like whether it's through reading or YouTube, or also getting a job. I think those are things that can really help you improve your financial literacy.
That's one thing I was going to add, actually. Like, I was going to also say, get a job as soon as you can, and not a job where like you're just cutting grass for neighbors or something like that. A job where you have to pay taxes and where you get a regular income, because a lot about skills that are required for adulthood, but also about your spending habits. I think the name of the game here is you should try to push yourself towards as much financial independence as you could possibly have at your age, because like investing your own money in your own portfolio, that's a big thing that you can do, and you can learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. I think that a lot of times what I try to stress in this club is like financial literacy is important, but it's also just like a life skill, beyond just like, yeah, it's investing in stocks. Yeah, it's maybe investing in like a 529 or something that can help you pay for college or something. But it's also like, you know, paying your taxes, getting a job, handling your money in college. So thank you for talking about all of those. One of the questions we had as a follow-up that Sean dived a little bit into was if you guys have any book, podcast, or other media recommendations for our members.
Yeah, I won't recommend my podcast because like that's kind of cheap. But I'd say like any kind of like current events podcast is really good. I listen to Wall Street Journal's The Journal. It's like a 20-minute podcast. It'll kind of like go somewhat in depth into like a good topic, and it's mostly around finance and business. I'd also in terms of like reading, like pretty much, you know, all the investing classics, but try and work your way up to them. So what Sean read, One Up on Wall Street, Peter Lynch has like really good advice and everything, and it's also pretty easy to understand. And so I would say like reading books like by Peter Lynch, maybe like Robert Kiyosaki or someone like that. And then moving on to like the actual like Bible of investing, which is like The Intelligent Investor, Security Analysis. And also like, I mean, a lot of finance can be like approached in a bunch of different ways. So like also just like read about everything else in finance too. So don't just like be limited by the finance mindset, which is like just learning about business news, but also think about like learning about like science or history or like biology or something like that, because like so much of finance can be impacted by like anything in the world. Like obviously Corona is a really good example. That was a biological impact on finance, right? So learning about that and like the actual implications, because that ultimately will have implications for how, you know, certain businesses in the sector operate. So I guess, yeah, read broadly, read a bunch of subjects. Like Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, has this idea of like the expert generalist. So just being like a expert in pretty much as many things as you can be, which makes sense because I guess it comes down to like the idea that opportunity can come from any kind of place. Risk can also come from any place as well with your investments. And, you know, just new insights in general can also come from just putting a bunch of different ideas together. Like finance is not like something that's super set in stone, like physics or biology. It's kind of like constantly shifting. So, you know, being on top of that by exploring other fields as well is pretty important. And I just like recommend being as broad as you can with your with what you read and take in, and not just being pigeonholed to just finance textbooks or finance classics or anything like that. So that's my recommendation.
Personally, I'd recommend having more of an economic focus to your own personal education in finance. And what I mean by that is, by knowing what's going on in the general macro economy, you can kind of contextualize a lot of what will happen in the realm of personal finance, whether it affects mortgages or it affects your personal savings accounts, inflation, all these things. So just by keeping up with the news and keeping up with how like certain like stories will affect the macro economy, that's a very, I think it's very powerful in helping you identify where personal finance needs are, and also aside from that, just have a better idea of what's going on in the world. So a podcast I'd recommend is Macro Voices. For the investment fund that I'm in here at IU, they require me to listen to that every week, and it's extremely valuable because it gives me a very great idea of what's going on in all markets all across the economy. And then there was one other thing I was going to recommend, was that sign up for some sort of subscription service for news, whether it's like, it doesn't have to be a paid one. Morning Brew it's not my favorite, but it's free. They'll send you an email every morning, and it just gives you a brief overview of what's going on in the world on that particular day. And that surprisingly helps a lot in terms of learning about finance, because you'll be able to get a really solid idea of how everything affects the markets.
Yeah, I just want to add on. I really think that the Wall Street Journal is a great resource. I think they also have like a student discount, so it's like $5 a month. So if you guys are interested in that, like maybe you can have like your parents sign up. That's a really great resource. Another one, if you're more into like individual stocks, there's a website called Seeking Alpha, where they have like people, they will like write up like, I guess like their commentaries on like individual stocks, and you can take a look at that. Now I would like kind of treat that with a grain of salt, because like, you know, it's just one person's opinion, but it can be like a good place to like look for ideas for like stocks to invest in. And then also, you know, I like to go like on Reddit. There's like different places you can go. You can go like Wall Street Bets, but I mainly go like on the like investing and like stock subreddits, and those have a lot of great ideas. But like, yeah, like just be open to like different places. You can also like go out like in your neighborhood, like look around, see what people are using, like go to the mall, go shopping, like see what people are eating. Like those are really great ideas to find what kind of stocks you want to invest in.
Yeah, just to add, Seeking Alpha is definitely a good source, but yeah, treat it with a grain of salt. Some of my better, I guess, like ideas have come from Seeking Alpha and reading the theses and reasoning behind like buying certain stocks. But I know that it's not like it's a good place to like get your ideas, but always do your own due diligence on them as well. And yeah.
Just one thing to add to that, I think you should never take anything that you read on Seeking Alpha as a fact, but by reading other people's opinions, whether it's there or somewhere else, it helps a lot in helping you formulate your own opinions about what's going on in the market. And that's something that if you do enough of reading, you should be able to do in not very long from now.
Yeah, I know there were a lot of really great points brought up. I know all the officers talked about how they use different news sources and how they kind of relate what other people are feeling and kind of base their own judgment off of that, but not necessarily relying on other people completely. Rajan had a really good point about looking at the macro scale and how the global economy affects the markets too. And I just thought that was a really great point, that you can kind of see where everything that's going on in the news and all the current events affect everything that goes on in the stock market too. I didn't hear anyone mention The Economist. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
The Economist has a great subscription service called Espresso, which is something that I get every morning. I don't know, I think I got it for free, but I'm not entirely sure. And it's very similar to Morning Brew, except it's better because Morning Brew kind of sucks. And The Economist, like the articles that they give you are very short blurbs about what's going on in the news for the day, and they're very informative, and it helps a lot in terms of knowing what's going on in the world.
Yeah, another good one is Bloomberg's 5 Things to Start Your Day. It's like, yeah, like it kind of like gives a recap of what happened or what's going to happen with markets in early morning trading. It gives kind of like the 3 top headlines. And then it also has kind of like commentary from Bloomberg's kind of main opinion writer on the economy or on their newsletters. So I find that also like a cool resource to use.
Yeah, and there are a couple of resources that come to mind for me are this website called Kiplinger. I think they're like more focused on personal finance, but they also offer like some like stock recommendations and things like that. Another one is probably like the New York Times. I don't like them as much as the Wall Street Journal, but I get them for free through ECSD, so that's like a good source. And they have this section called like Deal Book, which is kind of like all like the finance related stuff that you guys can look at.
If you want to get the Wall Street Journal for free, come to Indiana University.
Or USC. We have it for free too.
Sure, go to USC.
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely use Dealbook every day. That's useful for me. But a free one that I also found a while back that I don't use anymore, but it's not so shabby would be I think it's called Skim Money, but it's like Daily Skim. Basically, like Daily Skim is like the general one that encapsulates all world events, but Skim Money is obviously focusing on economics. Okay, Gordon, you want to move on with the next topic?
Yeah, I know you guys just shamelessly plugged your schools, but I think the one question that we all really want to know the answer to is what have you guys been doing in college? And can you guys kind of talk about your college experiences and the different activities you guys do?
Like I kind of already gave a brief overview, but just going more in depth. Last semester, I was involved in an undergraduate research project, or like it was like a research project, and I was a research assistant for the political science school here. I found myself not enjoying that, so I left it. But throughout my experience here, I've been involved in the financial services club. A lot of business schools will have a club similar to this that's focused on the financial services industry, and I think that's a really good place to start. It's honestly somewhat necessary if you're planning on getting into that industry. But like I was never much of an investment person. That I don't want to work in investment management for my career, but I thought I'd step outside of my comfort zone and this semester apply for a student-run investment fund, and I got in, and I've had a great time with it since because what I focus on is just the macroeconomy, and I love learning about that. So that's where I kind of found my passion, and I'm trying to run with it now. And I'm this semester I also got involved with a social fraternity. And what I'll say about that is that it's very important, like if you're going to a business school like I am, that you are involved in some business school related clubs or organizations, and you're involved in some that aren't in the business school. I know somebody who's like the vice president of the beekeeping club at Indiana University, and he knows nothing about beekeeping, but it's cool because he's a Kelly student, he's a business student, but he has some sort of interest that's outside of business, and that helps you define a lot about who you are in your time here.
Just to chime in real quick, the one thing I always tell students, like when they're thinking about next year in school, like the two pieces of advice I always give. The one is like, do you see yourself being successful at that school? Because it's not where you go, it's what you do when you're there. Like you can go to like Harvard or Stanford, whatever, but if you just sit in your dorm all day and play video games, it does you no good, right? And versus someone who goes to like, they go to Las Positas and they transfer to UCLA and they are super involved. Like, which one would you rather be, right? Like there's something to be said for the opportunities you take. And so with that, the other thing I like to say is don't be afraid of the word yes. Now, obviously you shouldn't be saying yes to everything in college, but you definitely should not be scared of opportunities. Like Rajan, he tried to do a research assistance for political science. It wasn't his thing. He said yes, he didn't like it. He moved on to something else. His friend, the beekeeper, might someday be like the best beekeeping business in the United States. You never know, right? Like, but don't be afraid of that word, yes, because if the worst thing is like, it's not your thing, you move on and find something else. Because that's kind of the beauties of post high school is you have freedom to do like and explore whatever interests you, and you should take that opportunity because it's so precious.
Yeah, I'll echo that again. A lot of the people USC is really kind of like known for its network, and I've been having a lot of access to alumni and a lot of those kinds of people who have graduated, both like new graduates and people who have like been successful in the industry. And yeah, the one thing that the new graduates say they miss is just the ability to explore a lot more fields. Like one of the guys I know who graduated from USC, he basically started a whole newsletter service around this idea of like learning something new every day. And so, you know, he said he started that because he missed the college kind of experience of just being able to explore and learn something new every day, and he wasn't getting that at his finance job right now. So he wanted to kind of incentivize himself to continue that because that's what he enjoyed doing. So yeah, like that's something that I haven't really, my experience for college has been a little different than Sean and Rajan's, because they've been on campus and really kind of getting into the college life feel. I'm still feeling like I'm in like my third semester of senior year almost. It feels like that, or third and fourth, because I've been at home. Feels just like a continuation of that, just class you go to and you come back and then go to class again the next day in the same seat, 2 feet away from your bed, right? Like it's kind of a different experience. So I haven't been as involved with my college community yet. I've been part of those 2 clubs, but those are fairly small clubs. So like when I get to college, like the one thing I'll be doing is like definitely exploring a lot more than I've explored so far. In fact, like I changed my major from econ math to CS and now astronomy. So I'm trying to explore a lot more than just like the narrow realm that econ and math can provide, or whatever it might be. Trying to just explore and see what else is out there. So that's something I've yet to engage in, but that I plan on doing, and something that I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Weaver, Mr. Rajan on too.
One quick thing, if you end up going to a public school or some private schools too, you're going to have to take probably a lot of general education classes. And I don't know like the selection of classes that you can take at each school, but definitely have some fun with those. I took a history of rock and roll class last semester. I'm taking a intro to jazz class this semester, and I'm having so much fun with it. And it's a very good break from business things. So don't think that everything you do has to be tied to your career somehow. It really doesn't. Just kind of like try to get good grades, try to be involved, be yourself, and you'll do fine.
Yeah, I'm taking a class this year, and it's taught by the former chair of the U.S. National Intelligence Committee. I know nothing about well, I know something because I took Mr. Weaver's AP Gov and Politics class, but yeah, I about national intelligence and things like that. It's been in the news, but I haven't really followed that as closely. So it's really good to kind of hear and learn about like national intelligence and learning about international relations, something I had really no idea about going into college, or really just this semester. It was nice to explore and take that class with a really renowned guy. Yeah, like the former chair of the U.S. National Intelligence Committee. Like who doesn't want to like learn from that guy? So I was lucky enough to get into his class, and so yeah, it's been pretty cool to take his class. And yeah, I plan on taking a lot more just like non-major related classes, to be honest. So yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier, but I'm also minoring in history at UCSD, and something that surprised me is that like how I guess underrated. I think the UCSD history department is really underrated because there are really a lot of great professors, and even though like UCSD is known as primarily like a STEM school, like the department, like there's a lot of great professors, and I've taken like several very interesting classes. So like this quarter I'm taking this class on socialism, which is a pretty interesting topic. I've also been taking like a history of modern Africa, and it's kind of I guess history is kind of related to econs, like kind of see how throughout history there's like always like a group of people that are being exploited. So like, you know, first it's African slaves, then it's Asian American labor, and then now today's like Hispanics. But basically like just seeing that trend and how like there's a large amount of capital needed to like, you know, and like investors to like kind of produce those like trends in history. I found that pretty interesting. And also yeah, come to UCSD if you guys are, you know, if you guys want to be in the beach. You know, like San Diego has a lot of beaches, the weather's really nice. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying San Diego weather. So come down to SoCal.
Yeah, thanks for all those experiences. It's glad to know, like, or it's nice to know that there's not just, you know, business, finance, econ that's like in your heads all day, every day. Speaking of which, we're going to move on to the next question, which is asking about any future goals. It could be about like your career, it could be about college, it could be about anything. And it doesn't have to be finance related. So I guess you could take a minute to think about that. And anyone can start off.
I'll start with career goals and I'll kind of go on from there. Like career wise, like I said before, investment management is not really my thing, but I know I want to work around some sort of market system. So I've settled on either focusing on investment banking or capital markets, just working through raising capital essentially for companies. And that's something that I don't fully understand now. I probably won't fully understand it for a while, but in kind of gauging that that was where my interest was early on, that will help me with some opportunities in the future. So getting into selective programs for these fields in the next 2 years at university, those are like some of my goals. And then my goals are also to gain leadership within the organizations that I'm involved in. So I'm trying to, for example, become a senior analyst or a portfolio manager within the student run investment fund. In my fraternity next semester, I'm going to be the academic chairman. And then from there, I'd hope to have more leadership opportunities later on. And I'd hope to also, like, aside from just school, when you go to college, don't ever forget this. Like college, you're going there not just to learn, you're going there to form relationships and build connections. And I want to expand my personal network, not just in a business sense, but in a way where I can meet like a variety of people who can all contribute something to my life and I can contribute something to theirs. I want to have a large group of friends and acquaintances as well as professional colleagues in the future and that's something I'm trying to work on now, just reaching out to people I know, people I barely know, trying to be friendly to everyone. Those are all goals that, like, it's not like a tangible goal that I can achieve, but it's something that I'm definitely working on in the future.
Yeah, I have many of the similar kind of types of goals, which is get leadership in some of the organizations I'm part of. I'm already in the leadership for my venture capital club. So there's just that, but I'm planning on trying to like get involved with more clubs. We haven't done much this past semester or this past year at all, but I'm also part of USC's college Bollywood dance team. So that's kind of like going to keep me busy when I'm on campus. So yeah, like I want to join a lot more just like non-finance related stuff, or non-major really. So just planning on joining like a band of sorts, like a small band of sorts. And then also, yeah, like Rajan said, building out your network, right? Like USC especially, like, you know, it has like a lot of good programs, a lot of people there too. Like, I mean, at the schools we're at, we're all like, our undergrad populations are over 10,000. So there's a lot of people to meet, and they're doing a lot of different things. So my goal is to like meet someone who's going to be like a future like famous actor from USC's like School of Cinema. I also want to meet like someone who's going to be like one of the next, we have a good public policy program too. So someone who's going to be like someone very influential in like the policy making realm too. So yeah, like just expanding your network, and like college again isn't all about grades. High school shouldn't be about grades either. It's like, again, about forming friends and relations and building your network, both in a professional and just in like a social sense as well. So yeah.
For me, so I'm also pretty similar. So I'm also interested like in business or finance. I would like to do something with stocks, but I'm not really sure like where I'll end up with that. I've also been interested in teaching. So you know, I've been inspired by a lot of great teachers like Mr. Weaver. So I'm thinking like maybe getting like my like a history, like teach history, like or like econ. So yeah, so I don't know where I'll end up, but I'm coming for your job, Mr. Weaver.
Good, you can come teach with me. I had to teach with Boone this year, and I'm kidding.
I have Mr. Boone. Okay. Let's see. Gyan, would you like to ask your question about networking?
Yeah, you all have said to build your networks, and I feel like that's really important, especially in the finance world. It's important in any aspect of life that you want, like, or any career that you want to go in, right? So like, how do you start? Because you say like, oh, okay, you find someone, and then they know people, and then they know people, right? So, but how do you start when you're in high school? Because people don't usually take you seriously when you're younger. And my question is basically, how do you start?
First of all, if you go into the attitude like that they want to take you seriously, then they probably won't. Like you're just as like you're looking to be more successful than the person you're networking with. make that very clear to them. Don't say that to them, but like you should have like the confidence to be able to cold email people, cold call people, and just about anybody who's like older than you, who has like been more experienced than you in a field that you want to be in, they're always willing to help as long as they have the time. That's one thing I've learned in college. Like I've started networking more intensely over the past few weeks, and it started by me just randomly emailing somebody who was involved in an investment banking program here, set up a time to talk to him, and we talked for like an hour and a half. It was supposed to be a half-hour call, but we just clicked. And then he gave me the names of like everybody else who was in his like professional group within this workshop, and I started setting up times to talk to all of them. And it's all just kind of going out from there. It's like after you start, it's a very effortless process. So don't discount that. There's nothing really to be scared of in this, like in networking.
Yeah, it's really like you could call it like a positive sum game if you want to like give a name to it. Like the worst is that you're continue your regular life. Like what happens if they say no? Nothing, right? The upside is like unlimited. The downside is nothing. Like not so it's like you should always just like reach out, because you, again, like when I was reaching out to like Tim Draper and Howard Marks and all these like pretty big people in the financial industry, I didn't know that they would, like, I was hoping they'd take me seriously. And I, in my like cold emails to them, I said, here are reasons you should take me seriously, but I wouldn't have imagined that I'm still in touch with them years later. Right. So it's, you know, maintaining the relationship and kind of showing growth as well. After you make your initial connections, that's the really key part.
You're going to be doing a lot of cold emailing when you go to college, depending on what career you're going into, like especially for the financial careers. That's something that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to network. So one thing I would recommend to all of you is to create like an email template, because like I know for a fact that finance people are extremely particular about their emails. And if you send them an email that isn't up to par, like I did this before and I got yelled at for it because it was like my email was trash. And so after that, I sat down and I wrote an email template. I checked it over with a few people who I knew who were like upperclassmen, and they said it was good. And I've used that template ever since. And it makes me more confident in the process of anything. And it also helps the people who I'm reaching out to take me more seriously.
Yeah, I think there's no shame in templates, like Rajan was saying, as long as it's a good one. I know there's obviously templates online, so like, I mean, you can trust them or you can change them. And I'm not even in college yet, but I know a lot of people have said once you're in college, you have like advisors who are either in your department or maybe upperclassmen that are so willing to help you with that. So definitely take advantage of that, I guess, when you get to college. Okay, well, that's all the questions we have for you guys. So thank you so much for showing up today and answering all of our questions about finance and otherwise. And the officers will be sticking around a little bit afterward if any club members have any questions. But that's basically the end of our alumni panel.